Today is the first installment of 2 on UV maps. So that's what I'd like to talk about today. UV maps can be pretty useful, especially for organic modeling, but not necessarily. So we're going to start with modeling today that isn't organic and show you how to apply UV maps, and you can see how useful they can be. So to start with, I'm going to build a simple little box. Like so. Sort of like a cereal box, okay? About the same proportions, okay? And we want to map a surface onto that. There is a variety of ways that we can do it. One way that we've done so far, if you wanted a separate image on each panel, you just simply select each polygon, hit Q, and give it a different surface name, and then apply a different projection map to that. Everybody gets that, right? Okay, well, what if we just wanted one map to go on the whole thing, just to wrap around the whole thing? You can do that too, using a simple projection map, but it doesn't work that well. In fact, it's kind of hard. This will be much easier. So the first thing that we need to do is hit Q to create a new surface, and we'll call it serial box. Oops, can't type. Serial, like serial kill. Serial box, and we'll give it kind of like Cheerios or something. Actually, it's going to wind up being green, so I'll give it a green color. Click OK. Okay? So what we want to do now is create what is called a UV map for this. And there's different kinds of UV maps that we can use. The one that I want to cover today is called an atlas. And what it does is it takes, and it's almost like taking an animal and skinning it and stretching that skin out. And when you stretch it out, we're looking at that it doesn't look much like the animal anymore. But you could, wrap it back around that three-dimensional surface and it would fit. Well, it takes the three-dimensional object and it literally strips it away. For complex, well, let me get to that in a minute. So to create this surface map, or this UV map, down at the bottom, right now, W stands for weight, T for texture, M for morph, S for sets, and C for color maps, I believe. C, I don't recall. Okay. T for texture, and you'll notice that there is none at the moment. So I'm going to go ahead here and I want to create a new one. New texture, and we'll give the texture a name, and we'll call it serial skin, just for the heck of it. And now we have the different map type, and it says we can start with planar. We have cylindrical, spherical. So these are the typical kinds of maps that you would see using projection, but you'll notice, and I'm starting with the oddball one right now, it's called atlas. And notice how it changes. Subpatch interpretation, I will leave this alone, linear. We can move control points, the old ones if we want. There's all sorts of stuff we can do. Relative gap size. I don't need to do any of this for this. Segment by surface and segment by part, though, can be important. We have not created surface sets yet, or part. Well, we have created surfaces. We have not created part sets yet, but it's similar. You can create different, you can select different polygons, and you can turn those into a part or a set, just as you can divide up your model by surfaces. And it makes it pretty nice because later on when maybe a certain set of polygons, they could be inside the mouth, like the tongue or something like that, that are hard to get to. Well, if you've already saved them as a set, thank you, then what we can do is that you can just go in and just click on over here. We can select the set, boom, and it works pretty nicely. We should do that on another day so you can see how to do that. It's the same as by doing it by surface.
Like specifically, like for example, if you had a car and you wanted to, you just highlight the particular polygon and then go into this segment.
Right, and then you say, here's my, you've already specified early on that these are the this is a polygon or polygons that I'm going to apply it to. This is a surface. So, and select it. And the same with parts. But in parts, you can select any number of polygons you want. They don't have to be connected to one another at all. But when you select that set, it automatically selects it for you. You don't have to go in by hand and click, 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 click all the individual polygons. So it can be useful. But the point being is that if, and you'll see why in a moment, that this would be useful. That if, and particularly for those, anybody interested in games, designing for games? If you notice Jack and Daxter, if you look at those models, you can see that the way the figures are done, that it's all one map. Okay? But what if you want to divide it up into the head, into the hands, into the torso, into the legs? Well, if you had them as separate surfaces or separate sets, polygon sets, when you look at the atlas here, it would splay it almost like you see a bug. You know, you see how, again, we'll use the animal skin metaphor, just stripped apart into all its different entities. And then you can paint on it, each of those separately, and then it will map it back on. It will take those skins and put it back on. And that's what we're going to do with this atlas skin. So I don't need to select any of these at the moment, and I click OK. And it looks like nothing has happened, nothing at all. But that's okay, because what I want to do now is I'm going to go from top view to UV texture. And you'll notice when I zoom in, I have my texture. And it's now, and that's why the box is a good example, because it takes the 6 sides and it strips it down into its basic parts. Okay? And we see down here we have cereal skin as our texture. But we don't have an image yet that we want to place onto that. So this is where we go with that. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up the surface editor. Okay, and we just have the green surface as our selection at the moment. And we're going to apply a texture. Okay. Projection at the moment is planar. And again, you could use cylindrical, spherical, cubic. Cubic simply takes the same texture and puts it all on all the 6 sides. Okay. You could use front projection, which would be it actually projects from the camera onto the surface. What we want to do is UV now. And you'll notice we have an option. We can have multiple UV maps for this. So, for example, what if you had 6 different cereal boxes and you want to quickly switch the map to each? Well, you could have 6 different surfaces here that you could switch to. I'm going to use cereal skin, and right now we have image selected to none. Well, I'm going to go ahead and load an image. And this image is not intended for this, but you can see how we can adapt it. And where it's located, it's actually supposed to be for a Coke can. And it sort of works on here. It sort of works and it sort of doesn't, but you'll get the idea that what you would have to do in Photoshop is that you would have to, in a square grid or a rectangular grid, you would have to lay out your top, your side, your bottom, your sides, your front, your back, and they could all be on one surface. And then we can go ahead and we can move these parts to fit on there, and then it would be projected onto there, and it works pretty nicely. So I'm going to go into applications. I'm looking for the particular surface, and it will be under the classic surfaces. So I need to go to New Tech, the Lightwave 8, and we're going to look into content. We're going to look to classic content, and I'm going to look in images, and now I can't remember where it's at. Let's see. I think it's under household or it's food. There we go, food. How about Light dew, that's the one that I wanted to use. It looks sort of like a Mountain Dew thing. Okay? So there it is. And if we look over here, it doesn't map very well, does it? It doesn't fit well at all. But that's not a problem for us. Because what I can do over here, and this is what makes it pretty nice, is that I can switch from here, and I want to look at my light dew image in the back behind it. Now what I'm going to do is let's go ahead and just view this for a moment and zoom in. Because now I want to take each of these polygons and I want to move them around so that it matches what I see on here. Does that make sense? That I want maybe this side panel to be moved over here so it fits the ingredients, and I want this other side panel maybe to fit the barcode. So I can move these polygons around now to match what I see here, and I can actually layer them on top of one another and use duplicates for the same thing. It's pretty nice. You'll see in a moment. So let's switch from points to polys. I'm going to select this one. Hit T for move, and move it over like so. Okay, now watch. When I switch back to here, see how it fits now? That one fits. Now I can take each of these panels and I can resize them. I can move them so that it fits the content. So let's go ahead and move these around. Let me, I probably just need a little bit more of this and less of the others. Let's go ahead and turn off move, deselect. And let's go ahead and take this polygon and let's move it over to the upper right hand corner. So I'm going to move this over like so. This up like so. Let's resize it. Like so. And let's look over here, and you can see how it's now starting to fit. It's backwards, but that's okay. You get, I mean, because we can fix that in a moment. But you can see how it's starting to fit. Yeah. Let me go ahead again. Let's move this about like so. Actually, let me move this smaller, and let's actually try stretch. So if I'm going to stretch this like so. Notice how it fits. It stretches the type, which isn't so good, and it stretches the image, but that's okay. So let's go ahead and turn off move. Let's deselect. Oops. Let's select another one of the polys. Let's move over here for a moment. Maybe I want the top or the bottom to have, there's the bottom one to have the barcode on it. So I'll go ahead and hit move, and I'll move it over like so. And if I want, I can rotate it. I can resize it. Let's go ahead and hit modify for, let's use stretch. Let's look at the bottom, see how that looks. See how it fits on there? I mean, not well. I'm not doing a really super stellar job of this. But this, remember, this is intended to be on the side of a Coke can. But you get the idea that I'm gradually moving this all around. Let me go ahead and let's do the other one. This one is right reading, and I need to show you what happens when it's not. Because if I want this light wave or light dew to fit on this side, watch what happens. It will be, in fact, backwards. So let's turn off move. Let me zoom out so I can see what I'm doing here. Let's select this polygon. Let's hit T for move. And let's move this one over like so. See how it's backwards? Turn off move, deselect. Now what I need to do is select the poly, and if I flip it, let's see what happens. That doesn't help me. Okay? But what I can do, and let's switch from UV texture to top view, and let me go ahead with this polygon selected. I'm going to hit T for, or not T, let's hit Y for rotate, and I want it to rotate from the center of selection. And you're going to see that it's not going to work quite yet, but that's okay. Well, I'm going to show you how to fix it. There we go. Let's, from center of selection. So now when I rotate it, see how it's all connected? So it won't work. That's no good. So what I can do is deselect, turn off rotate first, deselect. And now what I can do is I can unweld everything. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to, let's see, it's under detail, unweld. And because nothing is selected, everything is selected, correct? Now when I come back to select this polygon, and I hit Y for rotate, and I spin it around, see how it rotates freely? Make sure it's rotated 180 degrees. Turn off rotate. Now go ahead and flip the poly, and now it's right reading. So now when we look at both, they're right reading. Now we still have a slight problem here. If I go ahead and I hit T for move, to move the poly, it's disconnected because I unwelded everything. But what we can do is if we do this carefully, all the points will be connected. If I deselect, let's go ahead and turn off move, and I deselect, and I can either hit M for merge, or I can go back and point by point weld each corner. I'm just going to hit M for merge. And what I hope to do is it says 16 points eliminated. Good sign. Because remember, going from 6 to the other, to 6 sides, I've added a whole bunch of points. And now when I select this polygon and I hit T for move or rotate, see how it's connected again? T for move, I hit Y before. Okay. Go ahead and turn off move and deselect. Okay, so that's fundamentally how you do that. Uh-huh. It's down here below. You have to hit T for texture. That's what it stands for. And then here you select new. And what it does is when it says map, it's the only place you can create the UV map is in Modeler. Okay. Uh-huh. That's what we're going to do on Monday. Okay. Because I want to show you if you were going to paint a face. Okay? You know, I mean, to map a face is not easy. And there are programs, 2D programs, that allow you to paint on 3D models, which are really the way to go. But one of the things that you also need to do is create a UV map for it. So I'm going to bring in a head. It's already been built. We're going to create a UV map for it, but we're not going to use Atlas. We're going to use cylindrical, because the head is sort of like a cylinder. It'd be like taking, and again, you know, taking the skin off of your and stretching it out. And it looks distorted when it's in a 2D form, just like looking at a map of the world when they stretch it out. There's different kinds of maps. I guess if I were in the 4th or 6th grade or 7th or something, you know, you'd remember all the different kinds of maps that there are, and each one distorts the world slightly differently. It's the same principle, and then you would paint onto that, and then you place it back on there, and then it fits perfectly. It's really cool. Now, I have not installed CS4 yet, but I am told that we can save these as object files, and if we do, you can bring those object files into Photoshop and paint on them and then bring them back into. But now, if it works in Lightwave or whatever, I don't know. I was talking to Chris about that. They started that in the last version, CS3, but it had limited applications to Lightwave. So if more is available, and I do have a program at home that I need to install that I just got. It's for 3D maps. I only have one copy of it, but we can install it here, and if you want to try to do that, that would be kind of fun. So you actually paint on the 3D model, and you turn it around, and you paint on it. And what it's doing is, when you save the map for it, it saves it out as a UV map.
What's the name of the program?
You would have to ask me that. Oh boy, Kirk. Middle age, what can I say? I'm gonna have to go to one of my software companies and look at it. It's, oh man, I can't think. Let's do it. What the heck? And then there's one more feature that I want to show you in here, why UV maps can be useful. And unfortunately, starting it now, you've already started your models. It's best sometimes if you apply the map early on rather than late. But some of you, depending on the complexity of your model, can start early and then apply it. And as you build it, it will change and stretch and fit to fit the model. But anyway, let me open up Safari for a moment, and I'm going to go to my website here. That's how I remember. You have to write things down. Oh, I can't remember what the heck it is. It's a 2D paint. You usually find it in the 3D section, but if I go to Kirk's classes and let's go to handouts, and there's helpful links here. Creation Engine is where I want to go, because I know that they handle it. And if I go to Creation Engine, I want to call it 2D Studio Paint or something, but that's not it. Cinema, no, that's another 4D. Intuos, Maya. These are all their deals at the moment. I'm going to put in 3D Paint and see what we get. Body Paint 3D. Okay. That sounds right. Body Paint 3D. That's one that they have. Not cheap. It's more than Lightwave. But for organic models and difficult models to surface, believe me, it would save you a ton of time, and you get results that are unbelievable. Because not only can you paint on it, you can work with bump maps and surface and transparent maps too. You can paint those on. So if you had a really detailed model, a face, and you wanted to paint stubble, beard stubble or pores and things like that, and you only wanted, you know, unless it's Wolfman, you know, you got hair all over and stubble all over. But if you just wanted it to paint on the face, you know, on the cheeks and on the neck, and even just parts of it, you could just paint right on it, and it would paint the stubble on that area. You know, rosy cheeks, you know, eyebrows if they're painted on or whatever, you know, or wrinkles and stuff. You can, you know, with bump maps, you can do all of that. Well, body paint would be the way to go. So why is it so, oh, wait a minute. That's not right. What was I, why was I looking at? Oh, that's the list price. Oh, my. No wonder I'm used to getting student prices now, or faculty prices. And it is 200. Why is it more for Windows? Oh, that's non-art. Oh, I don't know what that means. Art, non-art. I don't know what that means. So between $200 and $300, that's pretty reasonable. $900? Ooh, a lot of money. But there's a, how many of you familiar in Photoshop with the extract tool? You're taking the class. You should be familiar with it. It's a way to separate an object from its background, but it's used a lot for things with lots of fur and detail, or it could be grass or something. You know, it's hard to draw around those little thin wisps of hair, and it does it differently. Well, there are programs that are designed to do just that and do it really, really well. That for people in fashion and stuff like that, where they do a photo shoot and they go, you know, it's a great shot, but we're changing the background. And, you know, they need, you know, they've got somebody with frizzy hair or something, you know, or lots of wind, you know, hair blowing in the wind, or they want to separate a lion from the background, and the lion has this huge mane. Well, how do you do it? And those are like $1,000. Just that's all it does. You know, it's the same kind of price. They're one-trick ponies, but what they do really well. It's an exaggerated or embellished version of the extract tool. Just like what we're doing here, it's the same sort of deal. Okay. So what might another use of this be? What I'm going to do is, and you'll see why. You may have noticed this already, but I'm going to step back a little bit and just do a simple texture. Maybe it could be a checkered flag. Okay? And if the easiest way to do the checkered flag would be to take an image of a checker, you know, and use it as a projection map on there, just on planar. But then what if you distort the image, if it's going to ripple in the wind? We used the displacement map on Monday. What's going to happen to that texture? Or what if you create other kind of twists or turns or bumps? You want that texture to move with it in a fluid fashion, not to look awkward like it's just projected on there, which is what it is. So how do we do that? So let me go to Photoshop, and I'm going to create a map that we would use, and we're going to do it two ways. We're going to use it as a projection map, and then I'm going to show you what happens in modeler versus layout, and then we're going to apply it as a UV map, and you'll see what happens. So I'm in Photoshop, I'm going to create a new file, and I want it to be 300 pixels per inch, and I want it to be, I'm going to switch to pixels, I want it to be 512 by 512, just a square format, high-res image. Okay, white background is fine. I'm going to call it checker flag. Okay, now what I'm going to do down here is I'm going to use the rectangular tool, make sure that it's a shape layer, and I'm going to click here, see what kinds of shapes we have, and I have this type of checker here that will work just fine for us. Okay. Click up here, click and drag, hold down the shift key, and there's my checker. And I could rotate it if I want, but I'm going to leave it diagonal. That's just fine for me. So there's my checker flag. To follow a normal protocol, I would save this first as a Photoshop file. So I have, if I choose to change the color of this or change its properties or add text or do whatever, I can do that. And I have all of my layers, and it's an RGB, and I'm good to go. But I'm just going to go directly to save this as a TGA file right now, because that's what I need for Lightwave. File, save as. Instead of Photoshop, I want it Targa, which is our TGA. And it's going to flatten it, and that's just fine for us right now. And I'm going to click Save. 24 pixels per inch is just fine. And I saved it in the wrong place. Save as. Let's go back because it saved it. I don't want it in samples. I want desktop. And I want content. I want images, and I want it in there. There's my checker flag Targa file. So 24 bits per inch is just fine. And I'll hide this, and I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to create a new object. And I'm going to go ahead and, let's see, top view is fine, and wireframe is fine. Let me switch to UV for a minute. UV, and I want none to show, because I don't want it, because I'm going to create another UV map now. But what I'm going to do is, let's go back to the top view. I want to reset all of these. And from the front view, because I said what I was going to do is I was going to create my checkered flag. Let's start with a box, like so. So here's my flag. Okay. And that's from the back view. And I'm going to make sure that this is double-sided. So let's hit Q for a new surface. And we'll call it flag. And just by default, I'll leave it kind of a white or a gray color here. That's the initial value, so we can see. So here's our unnamed object. I guess now would be a good time to save it. File, save object as. Let's go back to the desktop. Whoops, what am I doing here? Desktop, look in my content folder. Let's look at my objects. We'll save it as flag. Okay. So there's our flag texture. Here is the flag. Okay. And I'm going to apply, before I do, let's make sure that it's double-sided so we can see both sides, because that's what you'd want. Correct? Everybody with me so far? Just made a simple rectangle, applied a new surface to it, and now I want to apply that flag texture to it. And I'm going to start by using a projection map. So I hit T for projection. Planar sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Because that's what it is a plane. None, I mean, I guess I could apply the light do. I don't want to do that, but I want to create my new one. And I'm going to go back to desktop and to my content folder, go into images, and I have my checkered flag. And I open, and there we go. Now, if I want to leave it like this, that's fine. Or if I want to increase the texture, the size, or I want to rotate it, I can do whatever I want. Correct? And it doesn't matter what side we look at, it's textured both sides. Sort of looks like a tile floor, not a checkered flag, but whatever. You get the idea. Okay? Now, one of the problems inherent in using projection maps, especially when you're in Modeler, is that what they use is a world projection. It's a world view. So, and what I mean by that is this is only like a little window, a little cutting, but if I were to move this flag, so if I select T for move, and I move it up, see how it slides? Have you guys noticed that? See how it's sliding around? It's slippery, slidey texture, you know. And so what if this were text? You know? Well, it's not centered anymore. What happened to it? In layout view, so if I go ahead and I reset this and I send this over to layout, I send object to layout, and I see it in layout, and now I move this around here, it doesn't do that in layout. So that's where you're safe. So if you do choose to use a projection map, and projection maps are appropriate in many or most cases, not in all, they work really well. That's why I suggested that as you're building your model, and as you're building a part that you know is going to have a different surface, or that will be applied, you know, that it's going to have a specific kind of surface, you select those polygons, hit Q, name the surface, and apply the just a placeholder color for it. Because color, when it moves around, you don't see it. You don't see it slide around or change. And then when you're in layout view, when it's fixed, then you can go in and you can customize it. Bring in your presets, use them if you wish, use image maps, use bump maps, transparent maps, whatever you're going to do, and it will be fixed and it will be the way you want it. Okay? But if you do forget and you wonder why it's sliding around, that would be one of the reasons. That you're in modeler number 1 and it's a projection map and it is not fixed when it's, and you cannot fix it. So you have to be careful when you're moving it around. So let's go back over here. So the way around this is to, and let me show you something else that occurred. Let's go ahead and pretend that we were going to use a displacement map, or we're going to distort it later to see what happens. Because as I said, maybe this is going to be a rippling flag. It could be torn up floor or something, and we want to distort this when we're done. But if I were to go ahead and add, this is annoying for me right now. All right, it's okay. Cancel. I don't want to do it later. So as we did on, this is going back to Monday. If I want, let's go to, let me go ahead here. Hold on. Map. I don't want map. Multiply and modify. There we go. What I wanted to do was to divide, right? To add geometry so that I could, I mean, even if I wanted to twist this or turn it or do something to it, to torque it in some way, I need to divide it. Oh, no, I don't. I need to subdivide. That's what I want to do. Faceted. And let's just continue to subdivide so I keep getting lots of geometry. For our purposes right now, that should be pretty good because I'm going to turn on smoothing, which will help us, and I need to triple it, don't I? So that when I distort it, it looks believable. Okay, now from the edge view, what if I were to come in here under Modify, and I were to use Twist, and I click Twist. Notice how the texture is becoming distorted, isn't it, at this end? Notice how it's not matching any longer at the end. I mean, we can really, really distort this if we want, but it no longer matches the surface, does it? Does everybody see that? Does everybody follow along with that? Well, since we're early on in the construction of this, and you can see how it's actually distorting the polygons here. It distorts the polygons, it distorts the projection. So let's undo this, and let's make a brand new texture. So this is going to be checker flag. And I just need planar. Okay? And I'm going to project it along which axis? That's important. Look at how the model is constructed. You remember that if you were to take a plane and you were to pour paint on it, be the z-axis. Because if you look at the plane here in the back view, that's perpendicular to the z-axis, so it would be along the z-axis. If you get it wrong and we view it up here when we're done, the UV map, and it doesn't look like anything, you know that you've messed up. You just, unfortunately, you can't delete them. You can only add, so think about it. Click OK. Let's come back up here. Instead of top view, let's look at UV. Let's go ahead and look at checkered flag, and there we have it. And notice how it loads the whole thing in here. Now let's switch back to our texture. We don't need the texture editor. We just need texture in here. Let me bring up my surface editor. There we go. Okay. Let's look at flag. And at the moment, it's projection. And I'm going to change that from projection to UV. And now watch how this changes. We're going to use planar. We're going to use UV. Okay, UV map, we're going to use checker flag. Notice how it does not automatically duplicate it. You know, it doesn't tile it. Now what we can also do is we already have the correct image selected, but if we didn't, you know, you can apply any number of images. And now the difference being is that this is fixed to the surface. And that's the advantage to using UV maps, even for something as simple as a flag. So we go ahead here, and now watch when I use move view. Let's use T for move. I move this around. Notice how the texture moves with it. It stays with it. It's not on that slippery slope anymore. It doesn't slide around. Likewise, when I twist it, when I select twist, notice how it goes with it. It does not get distorted, except for the fact that, see how it matches perfectly, nicely? However, if I had used this texture before and I didn't use this map and I tried to create the map after the fact, like now, with it already twisted, it won't work. It will look like the distorted view of the projection map. Just take my word for it. I could spend another 15, 20 minutes to demonstrate for you. So it's best when you're applying the UV map to apply it early on, when it's in its undistorted mode. But if we were to take this over now and we were to switch and we were to send object to layout, okay, I got to remove the other one, flag 1, I guess, and we're going to clear selected. Yes, so now we have this here. See how that's mapped on there really nicely. And likewise, if I were to go back here, let's undo that so it's back again. And I was using that example of the Ripley flag. Let's switch back to layout. And we have it here. We're on the wrong side here. Let's select the light and let's rotate the light. Oop, wrong. Come on. There. See this a little bit better. And let's go ahead with the object properties. Let's select the object. We have flag object properties. Remember how we did deform the other day? We have a morph target. We'll select flag. If we're going to use morph, and right now we're going to select enable bump. We're going to select texture. And let's use, again, a procedural again. So instead of image map, we'll use procedural. We'll start with that one. See how that texture fits that really nicely? Now I need to make sure, because that's wrong. Let's go ahead and click here. Make sure turbulence, reference object, flag. Make sure it's along the Z. There we go. Notice how it follows out like a piece of fabric really nicely. There was a logo I designed. Let me see if I can find it. I don't know that I can, but okay. I can't remember what it is. I'll find it and I'll show you. I don't need to show you. It was a logo that I did for my son's robotics team. And I wanted, in certain situations, the logo to look like it was on, it has this pirate feel to it, you know, the skull and crossbones. And I wanted it to look like it was on this torn piece of leather, you know, this weathered piece of leather that was kind of bumpy and ripply and stuff. And that was how I did it, and it looked pretty cool. So this has lots of applications. you know, knowing 3D would help you as a graphic designer, as an illustrator. I think it can be a really useful tool, really, really useful tool. Why can't I remember it? Here, let me try something here. Because I do want to keep this on video, and I think we have enough time here. Let me open up my .Mac account, and because if I have to put in the actual URL, and I don't remember what it is, because it's not the kind of thing that rolls off your tongue. It's kmiller66, you know, .Mac, and then site number 4 or 5, I don't know. It's kind of bizarre. So maybe it's site 4. Yeah, it's site 4. Okay. So let me visit it. Okay. Now I know what it is. This doesn't roll off your tongue. It's oh no. Don't do that. Don't do that. Site 4. Welcome. Whoops. Oh, no. Don't. Please don't. Okay, I'm going to have to turn off the video and find it. Come back to it. Well, what I could do, I suppose, is project it from my laptop. It'd be better just to stop it and find it and show you as an example of when UV maps for something simple like a logo would be useful. And on Monday, what I said we'll do is we'll take the head, a human head, could be any kind of head. And that's a good example of a gnarly kind of surface with lots of compound curves, stuff, and then create a UV map for it, and it looks like a stretched out skin. Take it over to Photoshop, paint on it, bring it back to Lightwave and project it back on there using the UV, and then you'll see how it matches. It won't look really elegant, but you'll see that it does work. And with some, the 2 examples that you see on my website of the heads, they use this technique for that. As simple as the textures may be, you'll see that they use this technique of UV maps to create the textures for it so that it matches. Okay.